Hello, can you hear me? Hello,
Yes.
hello. Oh, good. Okay.
Can hear you. Yeah.
My computer was saying my microphone's not working, but I think it's working now. So wait, what is a quorum? 6? Is 6 a quorum? We got 1, 2, 3.
Hey, Paul, could you stop in and see us this week sometime?
Sure.
I need you to sign that modification for the
Okay.
Discovery Depot. And we have a whole plan set for you to sign. So warm up your signature hand. There's going to be a lot of
Okay.
signing.
So you need a wet signature.
Yeah, the regulations say before I can issue a zoning permit, I need your signature on plan sets. So
Okay, I'll come in tomorrow morning.
not tomorrow because I don't have them yet.
Okay, all right.
But you could come in and sign the modification, or you could wait till the end of the week and do both at the same time.
Okay, I'm not going to be here Thursday or Friday. Does Wednesday work?
Wednesday will be fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, we got 4. No, we got 5. No, Katie. We got Katie. We got 5. Just need 1 more. Jennifer, should we try making some phone calls? Have you got John DeVivo's phone number or Laurel Manville's phone number?
I talked to John yesterday. He said he'd be here tonight.
Okay.
We can start making calls. Let's see.
Actually, Sarah and Binu already said they weren't not coming.
Right.
So the only possibilities would be John and Laurel.
Okay, we'll do that.
We only had 1 to spare tonight. We've got all the Republicans. It's the Democrats that are lazy tonight.
Oh, you're fresh out of alternates too.
That's right. Both the Democrats and the Republicans need to send some more people over to us.
Yeah.
We've emailed and called John and we've emailed Laurel. The clerk has her phone number, but I don't have it on my spreadsheet. Craig, which reminds me, could you send me your address and your phone number as well so I can put it on my spreadsheet? So in instances like this. I'm sure the clerk has it, but I didn't get transferred to our spreadsheet. So this is unusual for us.
Yeah, I can't remember not having a quorum, but
No, I can't either.
it doesn't help to lose so many members
Mm-hmm,
as we have.
right.
Hey, there's John. All right.
Just in the nick of time, John.
Great. We can do the people's business. So I call to order. Can you hear us, John? Okay, I call to order the meeting of the Inland Wetlands Agency of October 3rd, Mansfield, Connecticut at 6:07 p.m. Members present are Aho, Cooley, Frattoni, Plant, DeVivo, and
Paul, one
Woods.
second. I'm
Yes.
sorry. We need to record. Start that over. Sorry,
Recording in progress.
I got thrown off. Pressing
Okay.
the record button is not my strong suit. So
I remember last time I asked you that. I forgot to ask you this time. Okay, I called to order the meeting of the Inland Wetlands Agency of Mansfield, Connecticut on October 3rd, 2022 at 6:08 p.m. Members present are Aho, Cooley, DeVivo, Tony, Plant, and Wooch. And we have a quorum. Good. So we have minutes from September 6th, which we can consider now that we have a quorum.
Plant motions to accept as is.
Okay, moved by Plant,
For Tony,
second by Tony. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, minutes are approved from September 6th. We have a public hearing tonight. And I'm glad we could actually do this because I know people have shown up to do it. So
we have
You-
read the legal notice. This is a continuance.
oh, this is a continuation. Okay, very good. So what
Yep.
do we need to do to continue?
So you need to officially open the hearing and then note the time and the members that are present. And then
Okay.
Jolene is going to take care of reading the script.
Okay, so I open the public hearing at 8:09 p.m. with members present. Sorry,
6:09.
6:09. I thought 6:09. Okay, did I say 9:06? I'm
You
getting
said 80.
dyslexic.
Yeah.
Okay, 6:09 with members present, Aho, Cooley, DeVivo, Tony, Plant,
I'll read it.
and Wooch.
Jolene,
And Jolene, you're going to read something.
I'm actually going to take care of it because I didn't. Okay, so let's see. As a reminder to all participants, including members and staff, please state your name before speaking. For those of you viewing at home on live stream, please understand that there's a 1 to 2 minute time lag due to transmission delays. If you'll be providing verbal testimony during the public hearing, you can call into the meeting at any time. We will take a few minutes after the applicant's presentation to give people time to call in. Guidelines for the public hearing. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to receive relevant information about the proposed application from the public. Order and decorum shall be maintained at all times during the hearings. The agency reserves the right to adjourn the hearing to another date and time if discussion becomes unruly and unmanageable. Given the virtual format, we ask that everyone bear with us if we encounter any glitches. If we are unable to overcome technical issues and/or the agency is having difficult understanding information presented in this format, the hearing will be continued to another meeting. Order of presentations will be as follows. First, the applicant will go, then we will have public comment. I will take public comment in support first, opposition second, and then those undetermined or requiring additional information will be third. When addressing the commission, state your name and address for the record before beginning your comments. Limit your comments to the subject of the public hearing. Avoid repetition where possible. Summarize reports and letters that are submitted to the commission rather than reading them aloud, as all written information is copied and distributed to members. Direct all questions and comments to the chair. Do not attempt to engage in dialogue with members of the commission, staff, or any other parties to the hearing. Speak clearly to ensure your comments are audible to members of the public watching from home and are recorded. Commission members may ask questions of anyone providing testimony, but will not discuss the relative merits of the application until the hearing is closed. Failure to abide by these policies and procedures may result in a muting of your microphone or a dismissal from the hearing. Participation instructions are as follows. The instructions are listed on the agenda. For those who would like to call in, please call 1-929-205-6099. Enter the following meeting ID, 865-4502-0074, and the following passcode, 587416. Again, to call in, it's 1-919-205-6099 and enter meeting ID 865-4502-0074. And the passcode is 587416. So before we go into it, there are a number of communications that I would like to note for the record. And those include, The applicant has submitted revised site plans through August 26th, and then a drainage plan revised September 26th, a sidewalk plan dated June 2nd, 2022. Let's see, they've submitted additional technical reports. They responded to Land Tech's 9/21/22 comments and the Conservation Commission's comments, I think was 9/27/2022. They have submitted revised mitigation plantings revised through September 28th. They did another response to Land Tech on 9/20/22. REMA, which is their wetland scientist, response to Land Tech on 9/20/22. A revised IWA project description from 9/20/22. And then they have a letter of transmittal for plans revised through 8/26, and those are detailed in that letter of transmittal. Let's see, we also have several comments from your peer reviewer, Land Tech. They just submitted something that I emailed to you this evening, and that's a comment dated October 3rd, 2022. They did a review letter that's dated 9/28/2022. They have an email that addresses some comments dated 9/21/2022. They have a review letter revised through 9/7/2022. And then their first review letter was dated 8/10/2022. I also wanted to enter into the record the resumes of Tom Ryder, the wetland scientist, James Rotundo, the civil engineer, and their co-worker, Anthony Zemba. So I think that is it for communications.
Okay, thank you. And I believe Paul Smith is going to lead it off.
I am. Good evening,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having us, members of the commission and Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Paul Smith. I'm with the firm of Smith and Bishop LLC. We practice out of Windsor Locks, Connecticut. I represent the applicant, who is Ruhi Development LLC. I see their representative, Ivy Wu, is on the call tonight, so she is present. Also with me, who will be doing much of the presentation, is Jeff Dewey of BL Companies, the civil engineers on the project, and George Logan. I'm not sure I see him on the list, but hopefully he's there. He's the wetland scientist who has worked with us on this application. Just by way of brief overview, this is an 8.74 acre parcel of property on the corner of Storrs Road and Middle Turnpike. There we have it on the map. As you can see, the corner of the property has already been somewhat developed. It has that gas station, convenience store, Dunkin' Donuts at the corner itself, and down below on Turnpike Road, there's retail space. I think it's occupied by something IHOP and a breakfast restaurant, I think also. And so that's already been developed. So what we're really looking at is as if you go north, there is a substantial, obviously undeveloped portion of the property. And what we are proposing, this is in a business, the planned business zone 3. So what we are planning is 116 residential units on that property and a commercial building of about 12,000 square feet, as you can see from the next detail. Jeff is circling what's now would be the commercial building. The other two buildings, the large one in the rear and the one to the north side, are the residential units. As you can see from the plan, there is impact on the wetlands. It affects about 11,600 square feet of wetlands, most of which is along the front of Storrs Road. It impacts about 240,000 square feet of upland review area from the wetlands. The lower part of the property, as you can see from the prior map, there is what we refer to as wetlands B. There's the green shaded wetlands up towards Stores Road. We refer to basically as wetlands A, but there is also wetlands B at the bottom, which is really mostly off property, but we are within the upland review area. We have worked with Land Tech, which is your peer reviewer. As Mrs. Kaufman said, we've gone through a number of exchanges back and forth in terms of the peer review process. We've sort of tried to sharpen our pencil in many ways and soften some of the impacts, especially with regard to wetland B, which is off property. We've tried to expand our mitigation area in a way to basically mitigate the impacts of the loss of the wetlands up at the front of the property along the highway. And so hopefully we've worked through this and we have something that the commission would favorably consider. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Dewey from BL, who can sort of bring you through some of the more technical details. And then George Logan will follow to discuss basically the wetlands and what we've done in terms of mitigation. And we've also actually, I think, looked at improving some of the upland area near wetlands B, so it functions in a better way. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeff. I do see you, so I know you're here. I saw you on the list.
That's helpful. Good evening. For the record, my name is Jeff Dewey. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer in the state of Connecticut, and I work for BL Companies, and we laid out the site plan for our client. As Paul had mentioned, the site itself is roughly 8.7 acres in area. There's some wetlands over here associated with Stores Road. We have an isolated pocket here that is actually a very small stormwater management basin. To take you for a quick walk through what's happening hydraulically and hydrologically from the site, since I'm looking at this plan now. There is a small area up here of the existing gas station that drains, a small area that drains out this way onto Middle Turnpike. The bulk of the site drains towards the west in this direction. There's another small portion of the gas station area that drains out into Stores Road and is collected. Both of these discharges out off the property are collected in the state drainage system located in both streets. The restaurant, which is the Toast, as well as the Hops 44 restaurants located here. Basically, most of the site and the parking lot drains here to the southwest. There's a break in the curb line right here and a small gravel pad, which so all the surface runoff from this paved area sheet flows over the existing grade and into the wetlands. There's no collection or stormwater management for the bulk of this runoff. A small portion of this area is collected into a couple catch basins. There's one located here, one located somewhere in here. And these are directed overland into an overland flow pattern, which just kind of, it's such a small area, there's really no visual path where it passes through. The collected stormwater from the gas station, which is in this area here, is directed into this paved ditch area here and collected in a couple of catch basins, and then directed to this real shallow stormwater management basin, which is also obviously the D series wetland flags. This is a very shallow, probably designed for water quality. There's no formal outflow for it except for a stone riprap overflow weir here at the western corner of it. So basically the stormwater flows into this, it fills up, and flows out. It has about maybe a foot to 18 inches worth of retention within this basin, but for the most part, most storm events would probably discharge outside of the basin. So what we're proposing, obviously, as Paul had mentioned, is a series of buildings. This is a mixed use application. We will connect into the gas station here and utilize its driveway and coordination of both pedestrian and vehicular traffic as appropriate. This is a drive-through through here, so obviously we use stop signs and bars as appropriate at these intersections to assure proper traffic movements. We're proposing to redo the parking lot here for the restaurants, including walkways and stuff, and putting the ADA parking over in this corner and providing appropriate ADA access. We'll leave this existing parking as it is today. Our connection would be right here. So we have two connection points to the existing access and parking lots for the existing development on the site. And we're proposing an additional right in, right out only over to the northwestern portion of the site to serve the entire site. Basically, access through this way will be mostly residential, since we have our buildings B and C. B is the larger 4-story residential building. C is the smaller townhouse style residential building. And our building A, which will house a restaurant and some proposed retail space. There will be shared parking between all three facilities, and we're also proposing a pedestrian common area here adjacent to Stores Road. This will be include pavers and benches and what have you to encourage pedestrian traffic to relax and enjoy the connection in the town and the various other developments located adjacent to this parcel. And in that note, immediately west of us, there's a fairly large development, the Haven Communities Mixed Use, which has 7 multi-story buildings, mostly residential. As we've been working with town staff and Bowler Engineering, the designer of this, the Haven Communities Mixed Use, we've designed a connection piece here where there will be a sidewalk going through here that'll connect to the Haven parcel and connect to our parcel and allow pedestrians to walk through and see the wetlands to the north and south of the connection and come up here and then connect into this pedestrian area here adjacent to Stores Road, and hopefully utilize the retail and restaurant and the existing restaurants and gas station convenience store and what have you. So the buildings themselves, outside of the proposed retail and restaurant, which is basically roughly 7,300 square feet of retail and 4,900 square foot restaurant, is the current plan for building A. Building B is a 4-story residential apartment building. There's proposed 51 1-bedroom and 51 2-bedroom apartments to be housed in this building. And building C is the 9,600 square foot townhouse style, which would be 14 2-bedroom units housed in here. The parking area has been designed to provide all the required parking for the various uses. We have taken as much advantage as we could of the parking requirement reductions. There's a few that are in the zoning regulations to reduce the amount of impervious area on site to the lowest level possible while still meeting the parking requirements in the zoning regulations. So the existing plan, I'm sorry, I tried not to go back and forth on you, but I just wanted to mention before I get too deep into drainage or what have you. The existing, obviously you can see everything's on the east side of the parcel. The total impervious area that's existing is roughly 92,300 square feet. And this, as you can see, it's roughly a quarter of the entire site. The proposed development, obviously we're developing what hasn't been previously developed, has a new net total impervious area of 252,000 square feet. And this is an increase of 160,000 square feet of impervious area, or roughly an increase of 3.67 acres. And this includes the buildings, all the sidewalks, including the residential area here, and all the parking facilities, concrete pads for refuse and what have you. Basically, this represents an impervious coverage of around 66% of the site. There's been a landscaping plan that's been designed to meet the zoning requirements for landscaping, interior landscaped islands, obviously all around the buildings and so forth. Some landscaping up in here for the pedestrian common area. The landscape plan basically proposes 29 canopy trees, 26 evergreen and 21 ornamental trees, plus a multitude of shrubs and ground cover throughout the whole parcel in the fully developed condition. As part of the construction plans, we've developed a detailed erosion control plan that meet the Connecticut DEP erosion control requirements. We've also designed a stormwater management system, which has been designed to meet and exceed the local and state standards. We incorporated a treatment train type of system, which is very common in today's developments. Basically, the treatment train system would consist of the stormwater being collected in the catch basins, and each catch basin would have a deep sump and a hooded outlet to capture both sediment and any type of floatables, including trash, debris, oils, and what have you. Then each of these would be directed to a stormwater management system. There's a subsurface system in this area, subsurface system here, and a subsurface system here. And I can certainly call up the boring uncolored plan if we want more detail regarding the stormwater management system. So I'll just give you the brief rundown. After the hooded catch basins, the stormwater is directed to a diversion manhole. The diversion manhole will direct the water quality flow into what's called an isolator chamber of this, which is approved as an 80% TSS removal and an accepted form of water quality treatment by DEP. From the isolator row and the rest of the detention system would then be directed into an outlet for all these three detention systems. The outlet is right here in the southwest corner of the parcel. And as part of the stormwater management system, there's a peak flow reduction of 46% for the 5 storms we analyzed and designed for. So that's almost a 50% reduction in the peak rate of runoff from the site. And I can get into that in more detail should people want to hear the amazing number toss that we do in stormwater management design. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on, as far as groundwater recharge, the existing site, in accordance with Connecticut DEP requirements for how it's calculated, there is no groundwater recharge provided by the existing site management features, and we will provide 0.25 acre feet. That said, the 0.25 acre feet, the soils out here are a very tight soil. The infiltration rates were very slow. So for each of our subsurface stormwater management system, we've incorporated under drain systems. Because the infiltration rate is so slow, these systems would not drain in a comfortable time frame, where if there were 2 consecutive storms, we're concerned that there would still be a significant amount of collected runoff in the system, which could cause a situation again with consecutive storms. So the under drain system will guarantee that each of these management systems will drain completely within the DEP recommended 72-hour period, which would allow for volume for any consecutive storm events that might occur. With that said, that's all the details that I have for you. And obviously, I'm more than happy to answer any and all questions that you have for me. Before I pop this over to George Logan so he can get into the details for the wetlands functions and values, I just wanted to note, after our Conservation Commission meeting, there was a concern that we were not providing as much green space between our parking lot and the high quality wetlands B here. So we kind of did two things here. We expanded our mitigation area, not quite doubled its size, which required moving the walk connection over and providing an area for it. And we've also redesigned this corner of the parking lot where previously the pavement was 20 feet from the wetlands corner right here. And we have since, let me see if I have that. No, I don't. I could pull that out though. And we've increased this green space area significantly from our previously submitted project plans. We haven't formally submitted the revised plans as of yet that include this change as well as the increase in mitigation area. We would like to get feedback from the commission. We believe we've addressed Conservation Commission's concerns. Technically, Land Tech, and again, thank you, Land Tech staff, for you guys have been great and very responsive and just a pleasure to work with on this project. Your reviews have been very thorough, and we've responded to all the technical comments as far as the engineering, and I believe we're on the same page with the project. So at this point, before we start entertaining questions, I would like to turn it over to George Logan if he's available to continue the presentation and speak more clearly about the actual wetlands themselves.
Certainly. So this is George Logan, REMA Ecological Services. What I like to do before I introduce myself is share my screen. So I'm going to, I guess.
I have to figure out how to stop sharing my screen. I can't find that button.
It's in the top, I think.
Yeah, on my screen, it's on the bottom, but I think it varies. So if you just kind of hover your cursor around, you should be able to see.
Yeah, usually I agree, Jennifer. Usually it's right here, and I don't know why it's not popping up here, which is very interesting. And usually I can expand this.
I just stopped you.
Oh, okay. So let's see if I have the same trouble myself.
Maybe I have to make sure that, yeah, let me know if you can.
All right, so I guess I'm sharing, but I have two screens here. Oh, there we go. All right, so George Logan, for the record, REMA Ecological Services. We're out of Manchester. I'm sitting in my Vernon office, which is my family room. Just by way of background, so you folks know who I am. I am a registered soil scientist. I am a professional wetland scientist certified. I'm certified as a senior ecologist through the Ecological Society of America. I'm also a wildlife biologist, and I have been practicing in the field since 1988, whatever that means in years. Don't try my math. So the first thing that I did is I put on this nice map that the federal government prepared for us. And this is the soil map. It shows you the property roughly of where it is. And it gives you the soil mapping units. And what I want to show you right off the bat is that we're surrounded by wetlands. These units, usually when you have either single numbers or double-digit numbers, those are indicating of wetlands, especially the lower numbers. This is an organic swamp 17. Here we have a very poorly drained Leicester, Ridgebury, Whitman. And then of course, across the street, apparently we have another large wetland. So we're kind of hemmed in by wetlands, if you will. Wetland delineations were done by myself, I think in November, might have gone out in January also this year. There's a separate wetland delineation report that's been submitted into the record. Also, subsequently, we have a wetlands assessment report, summary of findings, which is has a July date. Second picture I want to show you is this. This is a 1965 aerial photograph of our property. And you probably all know this. I didn't until I started looking at it, but this sort of is an old development here with that is no longer there. And I'm going to point out to the area right here that's all the way, I guess, to the northwest, which is where the septic system for this prior development was. And we'll talk about that in a little bit because it's, interestingly enough, it's going to be in the area that we're proposing some wetland mitigation. Second picture, I want you to know, before I go to that, I want you to note that this state route has 2 lanes at this point. But if you go to this, which is a 2004 aerial photograph, you can see as the years go by, the quality of aerials gets a little better, is you have a reconstruction of a significant portion of the state route, which pushed the wetlands to both sides. I guess there was some impact on both sides. And I want to notice that this area here is where what I'm calling wetland A is going to occur. The next picture gives you sort of an oblique 2012 aerial photograph of the site. You can see the existing commercial establishments on this portion of the site. Again, north is straight up, more or less. And you can see that a large portion of the site here that's an upland is reverting to sort of a mixture of shrub, and there's some trees, there's some hemlocks right here, some white pines. And I want you to notice this area here, because I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. So the next picture is a 2015. No, this is in the report. 2015. Oh, sorry, 13. The other one was 12. And you can see that this area has a tree canopy. But in the next picture, you see that the canopy is gone. For the most part, there's a few trees that are left. And then we see that we have this little detention water quality basin that occurs. That was when there was some improvements to the corner establishment here with the gas station, and they needed to do something for water quality. And there's a couple of concrete swales. You've seen those off the parking lot as sheet flow, leak offs, I would say. And there's your little wetland here that we also delineated as a regulated area. The next one, and yeah, hold on a second. I must have missed one of my wetland figures. At any rate, we'll get back to that. Oh, okay. So this is a figure that I had in my report. What I don't show here is the wetland that's up along the highway, the state route. That's going to be wetland A. I'll show it to you in a little bit. But this was my rendition of what we're calling wetland B, which extends off-site for quite a ways. There's a utility row over here. There's a beaver dam that's taking advantage of that. And what you see underlying there in these mapping units of various green colors is the National Wetlands Inventory. So I took that and expanded it a little bit to the road and a little bit to the road here. And I said, that's wetland B, which is my evaluation unit, since we have a good cutoff here at the utility berm, if you will. And that I calculated that being about 7.8 acres at the time. Subsequently, I was asked by the Conservation Commission if I could do a little better in showing you where the wetland B, which is now in this map. What I did is I annotated an existing photo that you probably figure you've seen before when the development next door, what was being proposed, which is all of this. This was done by my colleague, Eric Davidson and his company. The green line is his wetland delineations that were digitized on this figure. And the blue line is my estimation of where our wetland boundaries are, and some that he didn't put in that I put in. I have walked this area off-site, and so I'm kind of sure that this is basically what it looks like. I actually went all the way to the edge of the Cattail Marsh and Pond and took a few pictures, that you've probably seen those in the report. So that's wetland B. He called it wetland 1 at that time, or I guess I would have called it wetland 1, 2 if I knew. So it's wetland B. And my recalculation is now not 7.8 acres, but it's 8.2 acres based on what you see, with the beaver dam being the choke point, I guess, for that evaluation unit. What I'd like to do now is to show you a series of photographs. So those are in the report themselves, starting with wetland B. This is the northwestern corner of the site, where there's a little bit of, here's a wetland flag, there's a little bit of wetland that extends, of wetland B that extends within the property bounds. And then if you, sitting at the corner looking through, when I took this picture back in, I guess, November, you could see the pond with a little bit of ice in the background. Second series of pictures now, obviously this is May. This is the ditched watercourse that comes from the other side of the state route through a large culvert system, and then comes back down into the core of wetland B. And you can see this is a wetland flag, believe it or not, here. So that's the edge of our property, where you can see the difference in elevation. There's several feet of this area. And that corner of the site is fill, because we took a couple of test pits. We were able to verify that there's a wetland down there at about several feet, 6 or 7 feet below a current grade. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And here's the culvert for the under Route 195 that brings the watercourse from the other side, the big swamp that you saw on the other side, into wetland B. Another photograph, series of photographs. I'm sitting at that culvert, on top of the concrete wall, looking down into the wetlands. So this is what you see from Route 195. Our site's on the left, and the other side that we talked about is on the right. And here's looking back up from a portion of wetland B that's near our, say, north corner. I guess that's the northerly corner of our site. And you can see cars in the background. Another quick picture. So this is the beginning or the top of wetland A. And wetland A, to the best of my understanding, is most likely a remnant of a wetland that used to extend more into the state right-of-way at one point, and probably at one point connected across the street many, many years ago. But what you see here from this pattern of wetness is that there is a break on Route 195. Well, it's not too big. The curb's gone, probably pushed over by a plow. And so a portion of the route brings water and wets wetland A. Now, part of wetland A doesn't need to be necessarily wetted because it has its own hydrology, if you will. But the rest of it is basically a ditched wetland, if you will, or it's like a swale, maybe not a ditch, more of a swale, a wide swale. And it is in part owing its hydrology from what's coming off the state highway. I'm now looking up towards the campus, if you will. And this is wetland A, the A1A series. You see flags on both sides. And there's a little bit disjointed. You saw there and probably in the mapping that there's one component of wetland A that's closer to the intersection, and there's another one, and there's another one, and then a little bit of a fourth one before it transitions into a wetland B, which I'll show you that connection. Again, this is the upper southern portion, if you will, of wetland A. Wetland flag here. Here's another portion. Again, transitional, maybe seasonally saturated in parts, mostly temporary flooded. It's not seasonally flooded, it's not particularly wet. It's a mixture of upland and wetland vegetation in several parts of it, but in some parts it's obviously obligates, and you'll see that in a moment. Here is, we looked at the main stream. It has its own culvert. This is a culvert, a pipe that comes off a catch basin, which is right up here, a series of catch basins, and it discharges water to the interface between what I'm calling wetland A and wetland B. And this is the break, because there is about a 3.5 to 4 foot elevation change. To your right, it's higher. To the left, it's lower. And that's where I made my cut, if you will, between evaluation unit of wetland B, which starts here and goes northerly and then turns the corner, and then wetland A that's above this. And there's a portion of wetland A that's actually the wetter portion that's just above that transition, which is down there where I'm putting the hand. Almost done with photographs. Now, wetland B, if you go off the southern property boundary, I guess, there's a steep slope, and then you fall into another watercourse that comes off Route 44 and then comes down. So this is the intermittent watercourse that comes from there, and you can see the character of the wetland. And as you go further and further into wetland B, it's a very characteristic red maple swamp dominated by spice bush in the understory and skunk cabbage in the herbaceous layer. And of course, it has other vegetation also. And finally, I did tell you that I went down and looked at the core of wetland B, where the shallow marsh and pond is, and the far off here. It was kind of surprising that it was not very wet, but it's not surprising because we were in May when I took this, we were dealing with the beginnings of a drought. So, and then here's a more open look-see of what you have here. A lot of cattail marsh, sedge marsh, and then way back. Now, I didn't think there were fish in there because this is what I saw, but I stand corrected because I read the report from next door by my colleague, Mr. Davidson, and he did actually see some fish in the lower portion of this wetland. So looking at these wetlands, we do the typical functions and value analysis. We use the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, what they call the descriptive approach, or the highway method. It's the one that is commonly used in Connecticut, probably 98% of the time. Somehow you see others, but this is the one that everyone's used to. It's actually done by a Connecticut firm, so we obviously need to support them. So these are the common functions and values that you have often seen. Functions are ones that are, if you will, intrinsic to the wetlands, whether we're there or not, and values are the ones that we derive, human society derives from. So flood flow alteration would be a value, but a wildlife habitat would be a function. And you see the wetland A. Now, the way that this works is the descriptive approach is a series of rationales that you don't see here, which I always look at when I render an opinion as to what functions and values are conferred by a wetland. So you go through the rationales, and it's sort of a balancing thing, if you will. So if you have a few rationales that you can check off, you might even not have the function or value for that wetland, or it's a yes, which means it's present, but it's not appreciably present. And then primary function or principal function is sometimes you call those are the ones that are there at an above average level. So these are when we look at a wetland, that's, okay, that's definitely wildlife habitat at a high level. So you can see the difference between wetland A and wetland B. In my professional opinion, there's a lot of principal functions for wetland B: flow alteration, production, export. Obviously, it feeds the food cycle of aquatic habitats, down gradient for Cedar Swamp Brook, for instance. Educational aesthetic, yeah, it's large enough. You could do a lot of things in there. Educational scientific value, obviously, is a principal function. So the comparison is there so you can see that wetland A, and my colleague, Mr. Ryder, looked at this. We have sort of a little bit of a professional difference in how we look at a couple of these functions and values, which I'm sure he will be able to explain his rationale. I see it as a wetland that's not highly functioning, the wetland A. It's next to a busy transportation corridor. There've been studies that have been done that basically show that any wetland that's close to a major transportation corridor, it does not have very high ecological integrity, especially if it's a small wetland, a linear wetland like the one that we have here. Okay. So now I have a few other exhibits to show you. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing. So it's been said we have about 11,500 and some square feet of primary direct wetland disturbance. That's filling. And all of it is wetland A, basically, with the exception of a very small part, way down gradient. So this is the area that we selected to do our wetland mitigation and do a compensatory wetland mitigation. So we're creating a functioning wetland. Our problem here is that, as I mentioned before, the groundwater, which is where the buried wetland existed, or exists now, but used to be there, is 6-7 feet below grade. So for us to get down to groundwater and be able to feed a compensatory wetland by groundwater would be a tremendous undertaking, which at the end of the day would end up being a big hole in the ground, because we don't want to go and start touching the edge of wetland B, because we would run into potential problems there. So the idea here, and this is something that I can get into in a little more detail, I've had several mitigation areas that basically follow this principle of having a perch water table. So what you do is you create a perch water table. Yes, it's a man-made situation, but there's many examples out there, some of the ones that I've been involved with, and I spoke about some of those in some of the responses that we had back and forth with Atlantic. We're still in discussion about all this, which is completely understandable. Here's the test pit, one of the test pits that we did that's probably in the southern portion of the wetland mitigation, and I'll show you in a minute because I have a plan somewhere. Yeah, so this is an area that's obviously replete with invasive species. You see autumn olive, there's multiflora rose, not very high value as far as habitat is concerned. Here's the test pit. You can see there's several layers of fill that went over the years, and your wetland is actually somewhere down there where you see some old roots. And of course, that's where the groundwater is also being expressed itself. This is what we've come up with to this point. We have a perch water table, and as you probably have been following the conversations back and forth, the first conversation we had with Atlantic was we would create a perch water table that would be fed by roof water from the building here. I forget if that's 1 or 2. And we would bring the water in here. It would fill these shallow depressional areas that you can see. Nothing is more than 15 inches in depth except one little spot right here. And there will be plenty of water, it would fill it, and then it would overflow at the far end, close to where you have our existing or proposed outflow from our stormwater management system. So the way that we would perch it, and something that I've done before, is to create an 18-inch layer of heavily organically enriched topsoil. So we're talking, 12%, 15% organic matter by weight. That's a lot of, it's probably something similar to what's in wetland B. As far as organic, maybe that's a little slightly more because that's an organic wetland. So we would lay it down in the way that I've done it before, and I cited some examples, is to put about half of it down and track it, basically compacting it. And then the rest of it would be layered on as you come out from the wetland with the machinery. And that, in my estimation, would have been enough to create the hydrology for wetland. And I cited an example that was similar at the Tractor Supply Center in North Windham. And then I also cited a couple of other examples based on wetlands that are on till, on compact till, which maintain that perch water table. And here's one example is right here, this little wetland here that's fed by impervious surfaces is sitting on top of dense glacial till. And we have a couple of test pits that we haven't produced yet to the record, but we certainly will do that in this general vicinity that shows those conditions. So what happens here, even during a prolonged drought or a moderate drought like the one we had this past year, it appears over the years that the cattail community and other hydrophytes that are in there that I've cataloged have done pretty well and maintain the character of a wetland. So we're talking something similar that we're creating here, even this is not on till. But in conversations with Mr. Ryder, we decided, well, okay, let's go belt and suspenders here to be absolutely sure that something's not going to happen here where the concern was, which was a legitimate concern, that we had a prolonged drought, that 18 inches of topsoil would go aerobic and start desiccating and therefore potentially open up, if you will, unplug it, and we would lose our hydrology. So what we ended up doing is saying, okay, we're going to still have 12 inches of topsoil, but below that, we will have a silt, sort of mineral compact silt layer. So something that is silt loam or tighter. So if we can find some silty clay loam, we'll use that. I've done that also in a project in East Hartford, where I brought some what we called pond sediment from a pond that was being rehabilitated. It was perfect. So it was a silt loam to silty clay loam. We laid it down. Voila, we still have a perch water table and a marsh. So we're putting 12 inches of that, and then the topsoil, less inches, and then we're also tracking half of the topsoil. So I think as far as retaining water there, we should be fine. But the next question is, okay, do we have enough water for this wetland? Well, first thing is the wetland doesn't have a large volume. I didn't want to create a situation where I had prolonged flooding, if you will, and then cattails would come in. I wanted more of a more diverse, maybe a little shallow marsh at those sumps, particularly the southern one or the southwestern one. But the rest would be sort of a seasonally saturated, temporary flooded wet meadow with a high diversity, including a lot of pollinator species. And we've changed the tables to allow for that. And we've also changed the tables because we had some obligate species, more obligate species before. And Mr. Ryder was concerned that maybe If we didn't have the right hydrology where it was on the wet spectrum, that some of these plants wouldn't do well. So we kind of switched a little bit to have more facultative plants than obligates. And those are the tables that you see here, and I'll show you those in a minute. But how are we going to get water there? So the first, we were coming from off the roof. And then the concern was that we didn't have enough water. So, and Mr. Ryder asked if we could have an under drain or some kind of way of taking the polished water, so the already treated water in the one of our below ground detention basins, and take that water and put it into that wetland. And so that's what we have done. And you can see, well, I don't know if you can see it, but I'll try to get a little closer here for you, that the top of the wetland, and by the way, the flow regime is from top to bottom. So it gets progressively, this is at 580, this is at 580, and then we cascade down to a lower elevation. So this is all flowing this way. So we have an under drain from this below ground storage system. And then we have the roof water from this building to this point. So we have a double source of water. And one of the things we've done, and we'll be more than happy to share some of the calculations, I asked Mr. Dewey to do sort of a modeling, quick modeling for each of these cells, top, middle, and bottom, of what a 1 year storm, which is 2.5, 2.6 inches of water. No, it's a lot, but we wanted to see how that storm would do through the system. And what we discovered is that for the most part, all of that water is going to leave the system. So we have more than enough water during a 1 year storm. And I think we will have more than enough water during smaller events. All right, so the other thing that I also mentioned in one of my reports, and we are showing this in this plan, and this is somewhat of a work in progress, has to do a little bit with what the Conservation Commission's directive is, can you do something more with this buffer? You've heard Mr. Dewey say that we were able to pull back the edge of our pavement from the wetland and give it more of a buffer. Obviously, the wetland boundary in this area is off-site, comes back on our site here. And so we have two areas. So we have a slope that we're creating here, and we have a slope that we're creating there. I think this is a 2-to-1. This is a little less steep in part. And so we're seeding it. Obviously, we're going to have some matting and erosion control netting for these areas since there's more than 3-to-1. And we're seeding with a New England roadside matrix upland seed mix. This is a common one that's used around Connecticut from New England Wetland Plant Sync. It includes several species of shrubs like gray dogwood and staghorn sumac. So over time, over say 3 or 4 years, you'll have a nice dense area there that's basically self-maintaining. And so that's one area. The other area that's in the green, I wish it was a worse kind of green, because there's a lot of invasive species in this area. And I'll show you a few pictures. So what I did a few days ago, I went out there and I was able to still go down into the wetland and find the wetland flag numbers, which were very helpful, so that I knew exactly where I was at any time. And so what we're doing here is we're enhancing the wetland buffer that, and most of it is existing. As you see, here's the, well, we don't see it here, but this is the, if you will, the tree shrub line, and it goes right across. And so we're going in here, and we have a program to remove invasive species. And it's not a 1 year program, it's not a 2 year program, it's probably going to be a 3 to 5 year program, because you can't go into something like this and and take everything all at once and then say, oh, it's done. Invasive species have a way of coming back. So usually the way this works is you go in with mechanical means because you want to take the mass out. And so you take the mass out, make sure that you don't disturb the surface, the soils unduly. And then you wait for year 2 and see what comes up. And then you can do a number of things. For some species, you can mechanically remove, just pulling, like barberry, you pull it, it's done. Garlic mustard, you pull it, it's done. But others, you might have to use a chemical treatment. And now everyone gets kind of concerned when we say we're using herbicides. It's something that's commonly done. And what we do is we use the protocol that the Connecticut DEP is promulgated. They have the Connecticut Invasive Plant Working Group, CPWIG, has come up with protocol per species of how you remove it. So those are the protocols that we would use. And then, again, going back up to this table, which I also had, is you see that we have wetland buffer enhancement area. We have 101 shrubs that we're probably going to interplant. That's the minimum number, interplant back into that area that we want to enhance the buffer. And then we have some large shrubs, small trees, 14, and then 6 trees. There's a couple of areas we can actually put trees in, and I'll show you one area in a moment. And then, of course, this is the herbs for the wetland replication area. We have 1,000 propagules, and that's not even talking about the actual seed mix that we're putting in, which is commonly used seed mixes that you probably are familiar with. So, here's an example of what the buffer looks like. I just took a few snapshots. The wetland is probably where the tree is, back here. And this is an example of dense Asiatic bittersweet. That's probably one of the toughest plants to get rid of. The worst one is Japanese knotweed. So for that, you might have to use, for the larger leaders, you might have to use what we call a cut and paint technique. Basically, and we're talking leaders that are at least 1 inch in diameter. You cut those close to the ground, and then you paint them with a herbicide, full strength triclopyr, which is like Brush Be Gone or Garland 2, one of those. That's the active ingredient is triclopyr. I think it's 8%, which that's full strength. And you take a shast brush, if you will, and sometimes we add some dye to it. And depending on the time of year we're using, we might use a bark oil so that it gloms to the bark and doesn't spread out and cause any issues. And triclopyr is much better for doing this, where you basically paint the cut within, a few minutes of cutting it. And it doesn't spread into surrounding ground, where glyphosate will do that. Triclopyr doesn't do that. So you don't have another effect on things you want to keep. And that's one of the techniques that we do. We tag things we want to keep before we go out and remove what we don't want. So here's an example of that. Here's an example of the buffer. So here's the wetland boundary flag, and it goes this way. And so you have multiflora rose thicket. So this will be a nice area. You come in mechanically and carefully remove. There's a hole in the area here you can go right through. Remove all this mass, and then come next year and see what's coming up. Treat that, and then you might do that a couple of times, a couple of seasons, say spring, fall, and then you have an idea of what's coming up. Maybe that's good, like maybe some spice bushes coming up, and then you interplant your native species. Remember I said we could put a couple of trees. This is very close to the end of that green area where the retaining wall starts. And this is an open area. It's about 22 feet in width down to the wetland. And it's invasive species that does have some goldenrods that you can see here at the edge. Here's some pokeweed that you see poking there. But this is an area that could be mitigated, remove. By the way, the reason that this is here is because this was an area for dumping woody debris. So you remove the woody debris, expose the ground, get rid of the invasives, and then you can have a nice planting plan here and create a buffer and also, enhance the wildlife habitat. In some areas, the buffer is very thin. So that's the areas where we would expand by a few feet into beyond the edge here. This is a wetland flag. There's the edge of the clearing. So this is maybe 12, 15 feet. So we could do some shrub enhancement on that side. I think, yeah, and that's kind of gives you a view. This is the parking lots associated with the restaurant. I'm looking right along the line. And some of this vegetation is not bad, but you have to pick through it, pick the invasives. And sometimes it's better to do that in the fall, kind of for tagging purposes alone. So you know what you're dealing with in the spring. You come back when things start growing. So that's all I think I have for you folks at this point. I'm sorry it's taking me a long time to kind of go through some of these things, but I guess the final thing that probably I need to say, or else our lawyer will ask me the question. This is my conclusion. Is this a significant? I would say that if we didn't give you, am I still on? I saw a little.
There was a little break, but now you're back on.
Okay, I did see a little thing that said, stop talking. I guess my conclusion is that, yes, we're taking a wetland, which is, in my view, low functioning. Part of it is what I call a glorified swale. And what we're doing is we're providing a wetland compensation that's, in my view, will have higher functions and values, not because, we're doing what we're doing, we're creating different hydrologic regimes, we're creating different, more diverse cover types by the types of vegetation we're putting in there, but also we're putting it next to an existing wetland. So its juxtaposition to wetland B, which everyone will agree has high functions and values, is going to lead this wetland to be higher value. And here's another thing. We don't think about this very often. So you're putting a development here that's residential. You have a walkway that links the residential development next door to this one that goes right by this created wetland. So suddenly what you're doing, the human use values of this wetland that's being created go sky high. Passive recreation, aesthetics, maybe even educational potential, much higher than what we're taking, which is at the edge of the road. No one bothers to look at it because it's not basically designated for humans to be able to enjoy the wetland. So that's another way of looking at it. So at the end, I think if you balance it with the offsetting of the wetland mitigation, including the enhancement of the buffer, I wouldn't call it a significant adverse impact.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now, as I understand it, there's going to be, this is expected to be continued to another day. So this isn't your last chance to ask questions, but if you have any questions right now, any commission members have a question for tonight?
I'm wondering if the agency would like Land Tech to kind of go over some of their comments.
Sure.
Yeah. So we met with the applicant on Thursday, and we received some of their more final documents. And so Land Tech was able to kind of consolidate some of their comments, but we didn't get their comments because of the time frame until today. So maybe Tom Ryder and Jim Rotundo can go through that.
Sure.
Jim's comments about stormwater were first and then Tom's, but so how would you like to, how do you think it would be best to do that, Land Tech? Do you want to just?
Yeah, Jennifer, this is Jim. I think I might as well go first. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the record, my name is Jim Rotundo. I'm a licensed professional engineer with Land Tech. I performed basically a technical review on the stormwater management systems, grading of the site, ENS, erosion and sedimentation controls, and so forth. In general, through our iteration process with BL, going back and forth, addressing comments, generally, all my technical comments have been satisfactorily addressed, excuse me. However, with this recent submittal, I do have a couple of comments or with some clarifications. In the created wetland area, it expanded in the northerly direction, and they are introducing more stormwater into that wetland through SWMB2, the Stormwater Management Basin number 2. It appears that the under drain that is feeding that wetland bypasses the outlet control structure. My concern with that is if that is the case, that should actually be routed as an outlet from the detention basin. Also, with regard to with SWMB1, there was a typo on the plans, which BL addressed that it was a typo and that the elevation would be corrected. However, looking at that elevation, it appears that it is below the lowest outlet from the outlet control structure from the management basin. And in general, looking back at the other two basins, the under drains appear to be low also, that they're not going to be able to outlet. So I'd just like some clarification on that. I believe that was it as far as additional comments that I had.
Thanks, Jim. My name is Tom Ryder. I'm a certified ecologist with Land Tech. George Logan had mentioned that he's been practicing since 1988. I have been practicing professional wetland science since 1990, so close. Like I said, I've been practicing wetland science since then. And I've been doing this review. I've been working with the applicants in the town, Jennifer, to kind of flush out a lot of the items here. And I would say that there's probably three things that I'll probably mention now, but there were a variety of questions that we had that have been addressed. And we're just down to a couple here, which I think currently in my mind are somewhat significant. And I'll probably have to work with George and get some questions and answers between now and the next meeting. So let me go over a couple of those. When it comes to, well, he mentioned a couple of things. So let me kind of get off my script and kind of address what he being George had said. He went through the functions and values. I wasn't really going to cover this as much, but he had mentioned it, so I'll kind of cover it. The functions and values of the existing wetland A in comparison to wetland B. I agree with his wetland B assessment. I had made a comment early on that I thought the wetland A, which is that swale that goes along Storage Road, I guess it's the western side of Storage Road, that I thought that wetland was performing the flood flow alteration and the toxicant pathogen retention and nutrient removal at a higher level than he was. And I was asking them that I was stating that I think that should be a more of the principle. But again, that's really not that big a deal at this point. The reason I say that is because it is what it is, and the proposed wetland is, so we're going to have to kind of compare the two. He's acknowledged that those the functions are being performed, and we can kind of agree to disagree on this minor thing. So I'm really not going to spend too much time on that. The second thing he mentioned, which I want to mention as well, is he went into a lot of detail about invasive species control. I haven't been in front of this commission in a while, so I just wanted to mention that I too do a lot of work with mechanical spraying, mechanical removal and spraying, and the science has gotten quite good in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. And the chemicals have been fine-tuned, and the selection and the science and the application of those chemicals have been fine-tuned. So you can actually do a cut and treat, you can actually do a spray of and pretty much isolate the impacts to the target organisms or target species, and greatly minimize the impacts to the non-target species. So I didn't really have a problem with that, and I didn't really mention too much of that in our reports. What I do want to comment on now is I provided a report today, October 3rd report, and it was submitted just before the meeting. I didn't really expect anybody to be able to read it tonight. I knew that this was going to be mentioned and it was going to go on to the next meeting. So, but I did want to get it in so that everybody had it. I can review it at your leisure. But what I've done is we're going back and forth addressing a number of comments. It's like 17, 18 pages or whatever. So what I did was I created on the last page a couple paragraphs that kind of isolated it, and I titled it Remaining Environmental Concerns. And the reason I did that is because for people to go through and say, okay, this was addressed, this wasn't, it kind of gets all lost. So like I said, I thought organizing it just at the end would be the best. And my concerns are down to the following three items. One is that, George mentioned it in his presentation, but I think I still have a concern about providing a reliable, sustained water supply to the wetland. Not only an amount or quantity of water, but expanding it to the duration, narrowing the gap between storms, so that you can, trickle it out or throttle the water so that it actually gets into the wetland system for a longer period of time, instead of just rushing through there, evaporating or percolating out and continuing out, and then 3 weeks later it'd be dry, and then you have to wait for another storm to come in. The second one was the question of creating an isolated perched wetland system instead of enhancing or building on the existing wetlands that exist on the property. George had mentioned that there is areas in there that are transitional wetlands, which I agree. There are areas in there that have higher elevations and stuff. Whenever I create wetlands, I typically tie it in. Well, George does too, if it's available. Try to tie it into an existing wetland system. These wetlands that are on the property currently have a proven hydrology. They support hydrophytic vegetation. They have saturated soils. I was out there in July or August of this year, whatever, well, a little earlier than that. And they had saturated soils. So they kind of have a proven foundation on which to build. And what I was looking for is an explanation of why they can't do that. One of their alternatives, I think it was alternate 2 that was presented a couple weeks ago, had an area where that promenade was not provided. I don't know if that's something that the town would allow, but one of the alternatives was that the promenade was not there. And if something along those lines would be pursued, you can certainly expand the wetlands and enhance what's there. Now, you still may need to do a wetland creation over there, but you probably wouldn't need to rely on it as much. You wouldn't need to rely on as much engineering in order to support that wetland. Whereas if you were to create or enhance the existing wetland system. So that's something I would like to have addressed. I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I think we need to flush it out a little bit better. And the other one is, the third one is creating a wetland system that's smaller than the wetlands that are being disturbed. It started out that, I don't have the exact numbers here. I was looking for them when I was preparing, but couldn't find them quickly and easily. But it was a value was like 40%. It was less than half when they first did it. And then we went back and forth and we discussed it, and maybe we can, I like the idea of the pollinator meadow, but we had suggested maybe making that pollinator meadow a wetland. And that way you could have expand the wetland area on the property and still have your pollinator, and you could still have your walking path. You still have your little bit of an outdoor classroom that George was mentioning, but kind of educating people and say, hey, this is what we did. So they did that. They expanded on that, but I think it's still like 75%. If George, if you can correct me when you're summary later, it was about 75% just from memory. Like I said, I don't have the exact numbers. But typically, when you want to create a wetland to compensate for an existing system, you want to do 2 or 3 times, at least one to one, or probably around 2 or 3 times, so that if the wetlands you're creating, when the wetlands you're creating aren't, let me phrase it this way. When you create a wetland system, you're going on your own experience, you're going on the existing conditions, you're going on the hydrological conditions, and you're trying to recreate nature as much as possible. And we do a pretty good job of that, but if you build, like 1,000 square foot wetland, maybe only like 75% of it or less would actually be well functioning in the first few years. So the idea here is that if you construct a wetland, twice or 3 times, then you start out, with the same amount of value, and then you can, it'll grow from there. So the size of the wetland that's being used for compensation, or compensation is probably the best word, I think is a little small. And I think that's obviously due to the area, but there are other ways in here to enhance the existing wetland and tie that in and stuff like that. So those are my basic concerns that still need to be kind of fleshed out. One is the size of the wetlands being created. 2 is typically what you want to do is avoid a wetland, then you want to mitigate the impacts of the wetland, and then you can create a new wetland. And what I'm seeing is they kind of jumped right to the creation area of it. I didn't mean to say it that way, but basically that's what I'm seeing. And I think we need some justification on why they can't, do some enhancement of what's there. And then again, the final one that I led off with is providing a constant water supply to that system. George has mentioned out a couple of things. That's kind of why I want to talk to him between now and then. We've done those kind of systems too, but we prefer to do a wetland creation that's tied into groundwater, that's tied into another wetland system, that expands an existing wetland system, that has a seed source, that has the hydrological patterns in it already. And I'd like to flush that out on why that can't be done here, either in tandem or solely for the project. A couple little housekeeping items in my reports early on. I think it was item 2. We had mentioned that, I think this was addressed. The wetland, there's a couple of little miss areas. There was the demolition plan, DM1, showed a 150-foot wetland upland review area, but the legend showed it as 100-foot. Just a minor thing to change. Like I said, I saved it for last because it's pretty minor. They just weren't consistent. And then the other one was that when they added the detention basin system to the regulated area, I had suggested that they revise the DEP form to adjust for the increased disturbance level. And I just didn't get a response on whether that was done or not. So again, those are just 2 minor things that I saved till the end for comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Jennifer, if if they're gonna go back and forth, maybe we can just continue this the next time. But it's very instructive to hear everything that we heard tonight. And if anyone has a question that you want to ask tonight, of course, this would be the time to ask it. But if not, we'll wait for the dust to settle and we'll go at it again next time. Do we have any public comment?
I don't see anyone from the public online, but maybe we should just give folks, if there are members of the public, could you please turn on your camera? I believe the folks that we have are either with this particular applicant or for the next applicants coming up. And we have not, I did want to note for the record, the Conservation Commission minutes of their meeting this past September, or in September, so those should be noted for the record as a communication. And you'll see also responses from the applicant and Land Tech about some of the issues that they raised. I do have if you're going to stop the public hearing, I do have a motion for you to continue it.
Okay.
Continue it to November 7th, which would be a special meeting because of your agendas. Normally you don't have your meeting the first Monday in November. So Paul and I had discussed having a special meeting. So
Again, that doesn't interfere with election day or anything.
that's correct. We did
Okay.
clear that with the registrars there.
Okay.
We can use, as long as it's a virtual meeting.
Okay.
Jennifer, I have a conflict that day. I don't know if that matters or not, but and I think George does too. But anyway, so
Okay.
we can have somebody else fill in for us or whatever, but there is a conflict on that one day.
So, okay, that would have been, George, are you going to be able to attend that?
Tom might know something that I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a conflict or not. No.
The meeting that's tonight is actually, the next meeting is on the 7th.
Oh, you mean down in Marlboro?
Yes.
Okay, then I have a conflict, but I did send someone else there. But if you're not there, then I don't know. Maybe we can hash everything out between now and then, and everything will be hunky-dory, and that's it. So we'll
That's
see.
possible. I'm just putting it on the table.
Okay.
I think I do, per statute, I have to continue this to a time and place certain. So I'm wondering if, let's see, we could just reopen it on the 17th. That's a special meeting of the, that's a regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then we could come up with a time and date certain between now and then with the applicant and Land Tech. So maybe I should continue it to the 17th.
Yeah, let's go to the 17th and then.
And then we'll do it on a time and date certain. Okay,
17th,
That's October 17th, Jennifer, I'm sorry, right?
yeah, that's October 17th, but there,
Oh.
With the idea that you're gonna fix an additional date.
correct.
Okay,
But we have to throw out a date tonight.
right, I understand, Mr. Commissioner.
Would someone like to put that forward?
Sure, I can put
Okay.
that forward. This is
Okay.
Luann Cooley,
Thank
and
you.
I'm moved to continue the public hearing of the application of J. Dewey BL Companies for an inland wetlands license for a mixed-use development, 2 parcels owned by Yamai Development LLC located at 1659 Stores Road and 625 Middle Turnpike. Assessors parcel IDs 8.15.2 and 8.15.11 to a special meeting on October 17th, 2022 at 6 p.m. via virtual meeting.
Okay, moved by Cooley. Second by DeVivo.
It's actually, this is an error that keeps getting carried over, but it should be Ruhi Development, the application of J. Dewey and Ruhi Development, and I'll correct the spelling in the minutes, but
Okay,
yes.
and that's okay with the people who put it
Yes, I
forward and
would.
seconded. Okay.
Yes, I would
any-
amend my motion to include that information.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, passes unanimously. We'll see you, gentlemen and ladies, on the 17th or at another date to be determined.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good
Okay,
night,
so
everyone.
we have, we have no old business because that one is put forward and the other application is tabled, right? Jennifer, B, the old business B is tabled.
Correct. And now,
Okay.
yes, Yep.
So then we move on to new business, which is a request to modify condition 1 of the inland wetlands license for the standard at Four Corners.
yes. Okay, so let me just pull up my staff memo. So back in 2021, I'm sure you have not forgotten this because you've spent a lot of time on this project. You approved an inland wetlands license for the project, the standard at Four Corners. Condition 1 of your approval stated that the applicant would do weekly groundwater readings via standpipes to be installed within the footprints of all proposed underground detention systems. And this condition was really to ensure that there was adequate separation distance between the stormwater and the stormwater detention. Because of just construction season and timing, the applicants are requesting that they do this after the zoning permit has been issued. So
Jennifer, just for the record, the public hearing was closed at 7:37.
thank you. That's good. So I have Sarah Sharp is here. So what they're asking is if they could basically have the zoning permit be issued, and then they would do those readings, and basically we would confirm that they did those readings, and we would hold the certificate of zoning compliance if those readings had not been completed, and they are going to have to show a certain separating distance just to ensure that the stormwater management system is working. So Sarah's here. Hopefully I've explained that all correctly, but I do have another motion for you that I can share unless Sarah wants to add something to what I stated.
Yeah, this is Sarah Sharp. I'm a land use attorney with an office at 147 North Broad Street. The only thing that I would add is that our engineers at Bowler had reached out to the town engineer, Derek Delage, about this process and that he had agreed with it. It's just with the way that this condition was written and the way that the rainy season falls, we couldn't do the 6-week monitoring before issuance of the zoning permit. But we want to get started, obviously, and so we still will make sure it gets done before the stormwater system is installed. And like I said, Derek Delage has reviewed and signed off on that process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion.
We have a
Someone
motion.
like to put that forward?
Can you all see it? I hope.
Yep, I can see it. I can put that forward. This is
Okay.
Luann Cooley.
Thank you.
I move to modify condition number 1 of the inland wetlands license issued on February 1st, 2021 for the Standard at Four Corners LLC, formerly known as Haven Communities, for the construction of a mixed-use development and associated amenities on 3 parcels located at 1753, 1733, and 1717 Stores Road. Assessor's parcel IDs 8.15.8, 8.15.9, and 8.15.10, and a vacant adjacent parcel, assessor's parcel ID 8.159-1, file W1614-1 to read as follows. The applicant shall obtain weekly groundwater readings via standpipes to be installed within the footprints of all proposed underground detention systems. These readings shall consist of a minimum of 6 consecutive weekly readings taken during the period of highest annual groundwater elevations, wet season, with actual dates determined by the applicant. The readings shall be acceptable only if they indicate increasing groundwater elevations to a peak elevation, with subsequent readings indicating a decline in the groundwater elevations. These readings shall show a minimum vertical separation distance between the bottom of the proposed systems and the recorded groundwater elevations of at least 2 feet. This work shall be completed as early in the process as possible. If the minimum vertical separation distance is not met, the applicant shall redesign the proposed systems as required for approval by the Inland Wetlands Agency. The applicant or owner shall demonstrate that the required minimum vertical separation has been met prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance.
Moved by Cooley. Second by Fatoni. I'm sorry, second by Katie. No, by Dorian Plant. Sorry about that. Moved by Cooley, second by Plant.
And
Any
Mr. Chair,
discussion?
there's just one little editorial, in the construction process, it's in the 4th line up. So it's just a little minor detail that I left out.
Okay,
So this should be completed as early in the construction process as possible.
okay. And that's okay with Cooley and Plant?
Yep.
Okay. And any discussion? All in favor? Okay, passes unanimously, I believe. Luann? Yep, okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're still looking at November to begin construction?
Yep, that is still what we are targeting.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay, we have one more piece of business, and that is the request of Mr. Galgowski
Yep.
for a culvert. And
Yes.
whether or not you can approve that by yourself.
Well, this is basically Mr. Gilgowski operates, it's the former Baxter Farm. He actually leases agricultural property from the town of Mansfield. The property is located at 117 Storrs Road, and the culvert, there's a culvert that crosses the road that he uses to traverse with his farm equipment. And so he's requesting to replace this culvert. He has reviewed the design with Derek Delay, but it's related to a farm operation. So it is my interpretation that this activity is permitted as of right, like many other farming operations. So I do have a couple motions. So either you would rule that this is outside of your jurisdiction, like you have with other farming operations, or you would move to receive the application. So I did prepare 2 motions for you.
So if we say it's outside of our jurisdiction, you can just approve that by yourself.
No, it means that it's not it's not regulated. He doesn't need a permit at all.
Doesn't even need a permit.
It's a farming operation. It's similar to a timber harvest. There's
Okay.
certain things that you can do for farming or agriculture that are permitted as of right per the regulations.
Okay.
So, but only the agency can determine its jurisdiction. That's why I continue to have to bring these to you.
Okay, does the agency, well, we have 2 possible motions here. I think should be permitted as right. Does anyone, if someone agrees with me, they can put that forward. Okay, go ahead, John. Unmute yourself. Still can't hear you. Maybe we can find someone else who we can hear. How about you, Craig?
I can give it a shot.
Okay, why don't you give it a shot?
If the IWA concurs with my conclusion that the proposed project is a permitted as of right activity pursuant to section 4.1 of the regulations, the following motion would be in order. Blank moves
Now you say, you
Excuse me?
you can start there. Craig Witch moves.
Craig Witch moves. Do we have a second?
Not yet. You got to move first.
Craig Witch moves
To approve.
to approve a finding that the culvert replacement on land located at 117 Baxter Road, Assessor Parcel ID 8.11.3, file number J.31, owned by Charles E. and Heidi Galgoski, as described in application materials dated September 27, 2022, is permitted as a right pursuant to section 4.1 of the Mansfield Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Regulations. Alternately,
No, that's enough. That's enough.
I was on a roll.
Yeah.
You're on a roll. Okay, moved by Witch. Second
Moved by
by
Witch.
Plant. And I remembered your name this time. Sorry about that. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Very good. Is there anything else we need to do tonight, Jennifer?
Nothing that you need to do.
Okay. Thank you for coming out. Every one of you was indispensable for the meeting tonight.
Well, actually, there is one thing. You
One
need
more
to
thing.
decide, we'll be reaching out to you because we will need a special meeting to continue this public hearing for W1626. So we'll reach out
Okay.
to you for a special meeting.
Very good. The meeting is closed at 7:49. Bye-bye.
Thank you.